All right. Good evening, everybody. No intro music, no lead-in music there. It's not live tonight. This is recorded, so the lead-in music is just to help those who watch live, just so that we can sort of start, roughly at the same time. So we just sort of dive right into the midweek blessing tonight. I'm Pastor Stephen Eastwood, the pastor at the Pier Seventh-day Adventist Church and the Battle Seventh-day Adventist Church right here in the middle of South Dakota. And I come on Wednesdays, 8 o'clock at night, usually live. If not, I try and get them recorded. And we're just going through the book of Revelation, looking for blessings, understanding, direction, information from Jesus to help us be a church, to help us be followers. And so we'll do that tonight. I feel a little bit like we are lagging. I often do at this point in a study of Revelation. The meat of Revelation, which if you're in the Seventh-day Adventist Church doing the Sabbath School lesson at the moment, you're in the heart of. But to do that without some of this background work, I think we can miss a lot. Here's why. A little bit of a recap here. But the church, we have the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And in those books, we can read about Jesus, his ministry, his character, who he was, what he did, his death and resurrection. And then we get into, Acts, the history of the church, Romans, understanding what that gift of Jesus means to us. And a lot of that gets explained. But as we're going to take a look at a little bit tonight, Jesus would say things like he's going to come back and get us. And the word soon is bandied about. And we'll look at that a little bit tonight. But it seems that Jesus is aware that as the first generation of followers starts dying off and Jesus has not come back yet, that there are some questions, some doubts creeping in. And so to conclude, to wrap up our canon, our Bible as we know it, we get the book of Revelation, which takes the Gospels, which talks about Jesus. But in Revelation, we get the book that is from Jesus. Now, if you open up your Bibles and you come to the book of Revelation, you'll have the title there, A Revelation of Jesus Christ, which grammatically is technically correct. But in our language, the way we converse back and forth, when we say a revelation of someone, there's a tendency for us to think that it's a revelation about that person. Well, we have that in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. In Revelation, the paraphrases sort of do some interpretation for us and say it this way. It is a revelation from Jesus Christ. There are some things that Jesus wants his church to know, you and I to know. So as we go through Revelation, it's written to those seven churches, and we get to read about them, what they do well, the things that they're falling for, that they shouldn't be doing, the promises that they have. And while each church gets a slightly different piece of information, we're all part of God's church. We're all following Jesus Christ. So this message of Revelation is from Jesus to us, his church. So I think it's well worth spending this time looking at the churches, the community to which Jesus was thinking about, talking to, describing for us right there. And that will give us some good information before we dive into the center, the meat of this book, which we will do. So tonight we're going to look at Philadelphia. Next week, I'm about to head out to England in a little bit, and I'm trying to get this done so that we can keep doing this while I'm away. And then when I get back, we'll dive into the throne room scenes, which is what got me excited about Revelation, first of all. We had a professor at my undergraduate college sort of audition, and he came into our class and taught Revelation 4 and 5, the throne room scene, and it is my since then it's been my favorite part of Revelation. He did such a great job, and I will try and do a portion of that when we get back. So there's this week, next week, and then there'll be a week off, and then the second Wednesday of May, I should be back here live, jumping into the throne room scene. But with that, we go into the Philadelphia churches. And before we do, I'm going to bring a couple things up onto the screen if I can find it right there. So it's three things I want you to know about before we go to our verse by verse look in Revelation 3 as we look at the Church of Philadelphia. The first thing, Philadelphia was a gateway city. It was a doorway, and that's going to become significant as we jump into the verses in Revelation 3, 7 to 13 here. It was up in the mountains. It was the newest city of the seven cities, the seven churches that were written to, and easy to defend. It was also the last one to fall to the Ottoman Empire much, much, much later. But it's up in the mountains, easy to defend, and it was a doorway into a region that had not really embraced the Greek language or the Greek culture. So while we use the term missionary as a term of people who go and spread the gospel, Philadelphia was set in this particular place to help the community from this point onwards to become part of regular society, sort of progress and update and use the inventions and culture and language that the Greek culture and language provided. And so that's what Philadelphia was known for. Now, with that, in the history of the churches that the seven churches represent, Philadelphia is also known as the missionary church, 1800s to 1900s, when the gospel started exploding and going to the rest of the world. So this should not surprise us in any way. Philadelphia was a gateway to just bringing people into the fold, into the culture of the day. And that would represent the missionary church that is part of our church history now, but was part of the future there. Philadelphia also, by the way, is going to look at the end times more than any of the other churches we've looked at so far. And we'll get to that in just a bit. The second thing is Philadelphia was known for its earthquakes. Now, all these churches, they were not so far apart that if one had an earthquake, the other did not suffer from that a little bit. So a lot of these churches were used to the idea of earthquakes and had experienced, at least at some point in their history, some pretty large devastation at the hand of an earthquake, but nowhere more than Philadelphia. In AD 17, they had, before Jesus started his ministry, they'd had a huge earthquake that had decimated their town. And the aftershocks, it is said, of that earthquake continued for the next couple of decades. So every time they would build something up, they didn't know how long it was going to last. It might fall down. And this became part of the culture of Philadelphia as well. While they were on the trade routes, they were a gateway. They were easy to secure their property and their territory and their wealth. They still were not an incredibly wealthy city because it kept just tearing down. In fact, so much so that Rome forgave them taxes for a number of years to help them rebuild their city. It was sort of an ancient day stimulus package, which we've known as a result of COVID and bank practices and things like that. We've seen how governments sort of prop up societies lest chaos ensue. And Philadelphia knew about that. So earthquakes was also a big part of their description of who they were and how they operated and why they were in the state that they were in. And finally, and you might have heard this, Philadelphia is known as the city of brotherly love. Now, we have a Philadelphia today in Pennsylvania here in the United States, but Turkey does not anymore. Because of the earthquakes, there's not many of the ruins. I can't pronounce. I should have had it written down right here in front of me. The name of the modern city that is where Philadelphia was. There's not much to see if you go there now. It's either buried underground or was ruined in the earthquakes. It just got over. No one thought there was really much to save, I think, unlike some of the other territories and cities that we have been looking at. But they were Philadelphia, and they were called the city of brotherly love for this reason. And I love this. There were two brothers, and one of them was king, and the other one controlled the army. Now, usually the one who controlled the army was the king. But in this case, the king was the king, and his brother controlled the army, and his brother never looked to take over from the king. He used his power and his authority with the army to protect his brother. Therefore, the city became known as the city of brotherly love. because even though they might have been related in brothers, those who controlled the army would do away with their brother in order to become king. There's a lot of stories like that in Earth's history, but not in Philadelphia. The brother who controlled the army did eventually become king, but only when his king brother died. And then he used his power and authority over the army to install himself, but not while his brother was alive. In other words, the person who had the power and authority used it for the benefit of another. And that's something we're going to tuck into the back of our minds as we dive into Revelation 3, verse 7 to 13. So those are the three things I wanted us to look at as we jumped in. But at this point, let's go to the missionary church and Revelation 3, verses 7 to 13. Here we go, verse 7. And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write this. And again, just in case someone's joining us for the first time, it's not an angel, it's the pastor, it's the leader, it's the one, the overseer, as the New Testament would sometimes call it, the overseer of the church of Philadelphia. To that person, write this. It's some important information here. You need to know it. These are the words of the Holy One, the true one. This is the King. This is the one with power and authority. He has the key of David, who opens and no one will shut, and who shuts and no one will open. Now, this is a little more cryptic than a lot of the stuff we've had in the seven churches. Usually we can read it and pretty much know what it's saying. And maybe we can here too. There's no hidden messages here. But the key of David is the key of David's palace, was often called the house of David. So the person who controlled the palace of David had the key of David. And Isaiah 22, I was not familiar with this story, but Isaiah 22 has this story of maybe a cupbearer. You think of Nehemiah, or a spokesperson in a White House situation, or chief of staff. Maybe that's a better description. Has the authority of the king's court. And there was somebody, Isaiah 22 tells a story, somebody who had this position, used the position for their own gain, for their own family, and for their own stuff. Therefore, their key was taken away from them and given to somebody who would use it for the good of the one who owned and ran the house and the people that he governed. So the chief of staff had to be removed because he wasn't working for his boss. He was working for himself. So to the pastor, the leader, the overseer of the church in Philadelphia, write this. These are the words of the Holy One, the true one, who has the key of David. And what this person opens, no one is going to shut. And what this person shuts, nobody is going to open, because they have the key. And the key will secure stuff, and the key will open stuff and reveal stuff. And this person, the person who's about to talk, has that authority. They are in charge, and they're going to use it for the good of the others. Now, people in the city of brotherly love would have been familiar with this dynamic, because here was the person who ran the army, who used that power for his brother and not for himself. Are we getting that? So with that, let's go on to the next verse. Verse 8. I know your works. Remember, this is Jesus talking, just in case that was not clear in the last one. Like he said that to other people. I know your works. Look, I have set before you an open door that nobody is able to shut. Now remember, Philadelphia was a gateway to a whole region that was supposed to give influence to everybody and bring them into the fold that they had missed somehow. And so Jesus is here. He says, I've got the key. I'm the chief of staff. I'm the one who's going to help, and I'm going to use this authority for you. And I'm going to put an open door before you, and no one's going to shut it. Even though you are a weak, poor, financially poor, you just don't have a lot of equipment, a lot of stuff as a church, I'm going to open this door. No one's going to shut it. There's going to be people that think that they're going to try. People are going to be working against you. But I have the key, says Jesus. So I'm going to open this door, and I am going to leave it open. And it carries on. I know that you have but little power. So some churches, some religious institutions have a lot of power. And in those cases, it can often be abused. And Jesus has some things to say about that. But to the church in Philadelphia, he says, I know that you don't have much power, yet you have kept my word and you have not denied my name. Now, Philadelphia had the same temptations as a lot of the other cities. The guilds, the trade unions, the cartels that you had to belong to in order to buy. And so this would have existed in Philadelphia as well. Caesar worship would have existed in Philadelphia just like everywhere else. Philadelphia had to deal with the same stuff, but they have kept Jesus' word and have not denied his name. So with that, even though they have little power, of course they have little power, they're not doing the things that would give them power. And Jesus is like, I see that, I get it. So I'm the one who has all the power and has the key. I'm going to open the door and I'm going to leave it open. Verse 9, I will make those who are at the synagogue of Satan, that's been used before, because people have been giving in to the synagogue of Satan, but not Philadelphia. And they say that they are Jews, but they're not. They're lying. They're not. There are people who say and speak for God, but do not say the things that God says. And this would have been going on in this synagogue in this region as well. It says, I will make them come and bow down before your feet, and they will learn that I have loved you. So there's people who use the power of the church for their own gain, like the first chief of staff mentioned in Isaiah 22. But Jesus is like, no, I'm going to show them that I'm not with them, I'm with you. And you're going to look like you have no power, but you have me, and I have the key, and I'm opening the door, and I'm going to leave it open, and it's going to be open for you. And so they will come and acknowledge you as the source of that, as a connection with that, and they'll bow down at your feet. This doesn't always happen in this world. Sometimes when people cheat their way to the top, abuse people to get to the top, it often looks like they're getting away with it. And that hurts, and that fills our chest area with pain and anxiety. But here, Jesus says, no, they're going to see what's going on right here. Verse 10, because you guys, you have kept my word of endurance. So and this is where it changes a little bit. It says, I will keep you from the hour of trial that is coming on the whole world to test the inhabitants of the world. Now, I don't know. You see, as the recipients of these letters got these letters, I believe that these letters would have absolutely meant something to them right there. While it reveals church history from Pentecost to the time Jesus comes, and we can see that from this part, from our vantage point now, I still think that the original readers would have got it and understood a message to them. But here is something very specific that Revelation is going to be talking about later, that I also think the people in Philadelphia would have got and applied to themselves. But it absolutely applies to us right now. All of this applies to us right now. But this really specifically does. In other words, there's going to be a seventh church. It's going to be another time period. You guys aren't going to go right up to the end. I'm going to save you from that part. But then verse 11, he says, I am coming soon. Now, I don't know if you've picked this up from me before. I struggle with the word soon in relation to Jesus coming. The Bible definition of soon is not the same as my definition of soon. And so I went unpacking this a little bit, and I came up with a wonderful definition in the last couple of days that I have not before. And instead of saying, I am coming soon, maybe it's like, I am coming ASAP, as soon as possible. And I like that little insertion there. That works for me. It might not be soon in the way I think it should be, according to my agenda and my wishes. But Jesus is saying, I'll come as soon as I can. As soon as circumstances are right, as soon as everything's ready and everything's done, as soon as we can put sin away forever and ever and ever, I will come as soon as I can, as soon as possible, ASAP. So in the meantime, hold fast to what you have so that no one takes away your crown. Now, I love this part because the word crown here is Stephanos, which if you take the word Stephanos and run it through history and come to the English language, you get the name Stephen. I'm familiar with the name Stephen, usually defined as the crowned one, but it's not the diadem crown. It's not the crown of authority. It's the crown of winning. When you win a race in the old Roman games, you would be given this leafy crown. And so Jesus is saying, hold fast to what you have so that no one takes away your crown. Be faithful. This is the theme of this church, is faithfulness. They're not rich. They're not wealthy. They're not powerful. They're not in control. They have not given in. They have not compromised. But they are faithful. And Jesus is like, that's okay. Even though you haven't done this, haven't done that, and there's not these other things going on, you are faithful. I'll do the rest. I got the keys. It's all good. You have been faithful. Keep being faithful, and nobody will take away your crown. Nobody will take away your crown of victory, of overcoming, which, okay. We might be talking about Philadelphia today, but we're also talking to the church where Stephen resides. Okay, that wasn't quite put right, but verse 12, if you conquer, okay, and the assumption here is that you are. If you conquer, I will make you a pillar in the temple of my God. Now, Philadelphia, like the rest of these towns, had lots of temples to lots of gods. And the biggest one had these 6 pillars. And in these big temples, the pillars would have been in honor of certain people in town. Now, you might go to a park bench today and see an inscription with somebody's name on it. So-and-so used to sit here, and it's been donated in a loving memory of this person, or a brick might be laid on a sidewalk or something. Well, nothing new under the sun. Back in this time, these temples, the pillars, would have been to memorialize or honor somebody of note. And so Jesus is saying here, if you conquer, I will make you a pillar, not in one of these temples in one of these towns. I will make you a pillar in the temple of my God. You will be honored in the temple of my God. You will never go out of it. Okay? Don't lay up your treasures with moth and rust, and 2,000 years will destroy. It says, but I will write your name. Sorry, let me actually read what it says. I will write on you the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the new Jerusalem that comes down from my God out of heaven, and my own new name. Now, there's references here to what's coming in Revelation, unlike other churches that we've looked at. If you have read ahead in this book, you know that it's drawing on some imagery that will be coming later on as we make our way through Revelation. It's talking about the new Jerusalem. But like when we get a dog, we chip it or we tag it saying this dog belongs to this person, if lost, return to. Jesus is saying, if you conquer, I'm going to make you a pillar and you're never going to leave. But I'm also going to write the name of my God on you and the name of the city where you belong, because you belong there. That's who you are if you conquer. You'll have this crown of victory. And you will reside where I reside, as it says in Revelation later, that where I am, there you may be too. I'm actually quoting John there, but it's got its own way of saying that in Revelation chapter 21 as well, that God is going to make his home with us. We will be, if we overcome, we will be a pillar in his temple. His name will be written on us. It's such beautiful incredible imagery. And then it finishes like the rest of the churches. Let anyone who has an ear listen to what the Spirit is saying to the 7 churches. This is not just the church in Philadelphia, but its message was specifically to their set of circumstances. So this message is to us. And there was a church in the 1800s, early 1900s. It's when the Seventh-day Adventist churches start. It's when a lot of religions that I find hard to understand started as well. But it's when Wesley came along, the missionary movement, Livingstone came along and started spreading the gospel around the world in a way that it had not seen since the very beginning of Christ's church. And so this was the missionary church. Now, don't be mistaken at this point and go, oh, this is such an amazing church. We need to hang on to their music. We need to hang on to their culture. We need to do things just like they did it back then. I struggle with that because, their culture is not our culture. Their tastes are not my tastes. But we should hang on to their faithfulness because that is what is commended here in this church, in this Philadelphian church. The people didn't have a lot, but that didn't stop them. And they kept the faith and they never compromised. And they did what they could with what they had. Next week, when we look at the church of Laodicea, we will see that that church is incredibly wealthy. And they did not end up in the same acts of service and the same faithfulness that Philadelphia did. But if you want to look at the old church, the church that many denominations look at as the sign of purity and all wonderfulness, don't look at lifestyle stuff. It's a trap there. Look at the faithfulness of that church. And if you can emulate that faithfulness, that commitment to the cause, to the gospel of Jesus Christ, then you will conquer. You will be victorious. You will have a pillar in Christ's temple, and his name will be on you. Don't work your way there. Just keep the faith. That is the message of the church to Philadelphia. And with that, I would like to spend a little bit of time praying for his church, for you, as we come and just spend some time coming before God, because we cannot be faithful on our own, under our own steam and our own power. So, dear God, help us in our following as we try and represent you and be your church in our communities on this planet at this moment in time. Help us to be content with our calling, our status in life. May we not be tempted to compromise in any way to get the things that are around us that are temporary, but to seek after you. God, keep us faithful in all circumstances. Keep us faithful. May we not run and hide. May we not do something different when we think nobody is looking, but to be present in your gospel and faithful at all times, in all circumstances. Keep us in your plan. Keep us in your mission. I pray in the name of Jesus. Amen. May God richly bless you as you continue to serve him and to be missionaries for him and to use that open door to go through and call other people into his wonderful love and into his wonderful care. Hey, I've made a couple of blessings back when the weather was a little bit warmer. It's already cooled off a little bit, hence no weather report tonight. But here, I will finish off with tonight's blessing. Thanks for joining us tonight. Hey, I thought I'd come outside and do the blessing tonight. I haven't done that in a while. I wonder why. Yeah, it's pretty nice out here, though. We've traded snow for the wind, but it's really nice and warm, which makes me obviously think of seasons. And we know that there is summer, winter, fall, spring. We get that part, but life has seasons as well, not just years. There are times when you're really busy looking after family. There's a time when you're really trying to get educated. And the secret to God's blessing is finding room for God in all of those places, putting God first, taking God with you in every season of life. Though we also do acknowledge that the different seasons have different tones and different priorities. So as I come out of winter and think about the glorious thing that is summer, there are times we come out of certain parts of life and into new parts of life, and we get a whole different set of blessings from God at that time too. So as we acknowledge the changing of the weather seasons, take a look at your own life and see how God has blessed you in the past in various seasons, and look forward to his blessings in the future while wallowing in the blessings that come from him right now. Live this life knowing that you are blessed. Good night.